Hey, Lauren J. About to make my first muffins, cupcakes, whatever it is. I'm gonna make a Betty Crocker box, and I'm gonna do it in the Mixmaster my dad got. And I put this next to the Pelican in the windowsill because pelicans are actually about forgiveness, and I didn't intend to bring forgiveness into this message. But it does strike me that forgive them for they know not what they do is significant, especially given the fact that at my grandparents' celebration of life this weekend, we recited the Lord's Prayer upon my cousin's request for Grandma's sake, which she would have liked because the night before she died in 2020, when my grandpa and dad went in to see her, and only one visitor was allowed, and my brother messages in that moment, interesting, because within this matrix we feel the resonance of one another and what we're doing, even if we don't consciously know that we're tuned in, tapped in, dialed in to anything beyond just what we were thinking in the moment that we send the message. When Bonnie and I had went with Grandpa and Dad to the hospital, and when my dad was allowed to go because my grandpa had difficult hearing generally, and so it was a great excuse for my dad to be able to go and be his translator, and so that was what happened. And my grandma and I, or my dad's wife Bonnie and I, stayed in the vehicle. And I asked Bonnie to recite the Lord's Prayer while we were sat there. And so we did. And then when my cousin asked for us to recite that, I found it befitting because she didn't know that we had done that, because I never actually shared that with anyone until now. And I say all of this as messages from my brother times 3 come in because of the Trinity, that we have an opportunity to change from being the victim looking up to a rescuer or hero to save us from the persecutor or punisher that is going to victimize, the one that victimizes ourselves by staying in a disempowered story, compared to when we actually flip from the persecutor stepping into the challenger position, where we can challenge the idea without persecuting the one with it, where the rescuer actually becomes the coach, not the one who gives the answer to the one that they know the game better than, but instead the coach in its truest essence by the Socratic method that asks the question, that draws the answers out of the one that had never thought to ask the question and therefore never knew they had the answer within them already. That's empowerment. Empowering the mind, which is where the mental aspect of empowerment comes into the frame. And then what does the victim that becomes empowered become? Well, the creator, of course. So here's the thing that I want to pose to you as I wash my hands before I do it. Clean hands and all that. I have a real challenge with all of the bodies and organizations that are suggesting brave men and women use templates in order to put other men and women in positions on notice in their public capacity, because it doesn't have any force or effect, for the title that we have when in the public is different from the name that we have and were born with in the private. Do you see how that works? I want to take it a level deeper now. I want to say that in school, which life is the ultimate school, we were taught that if you copy someone else's work verbatim, word for word, that's called plagiarism. And now what is different between plagiarism by our school's definition and using someone else's template in a legal capacity to put a man or woman in a public position on notice to let them know that they are in the wrong? Well, it's putting a fiction on notice, essentially. And we can use the example of Medusa as the woman with many snake heads that could be replaced when chopped off, because that's what figureheads holding public offices can do too. So the metaphor of Medusa as the res publica, of the public thing or public affair, is very befitting. But that's not where I wanted to go with this. I want to actually challenge the men and women that are leading groups to their downfall by using templates that I believe are trapdoors. And I want to be challenged and proved wrong without being persecuted for bringing forth this very reasonable presentation of an idea. If you are playing baseball, you have home base you start on, first, second, third, and you get back home, right? So if I am a player before you, and I run to first and then second, and I'm on third base, if you hit a home run and I don't make it home, can you? No. You have to wait for me to get there, right? Right. So, if I don't know how to run home, and you've hit a home run, but you can't get there because I don't know how to get home, you can't get home either. Now I also want to bring you to the idea of a sword fight, where the sacred word is the true sword that we are called to wield wisely, without cutting ourselves or others. In the process, by persecuting those we could challenge without persecuting. And this is where we actually shift into an empowered dynamic, which I believe is what we're called to do now. If you have a sword that is mine, but I lent to you for battle, and you're ready to use that sword, and you've practiced with that sword, and you are fully prepared and ready to go to battle with that sword, and I have a different sword that I've been using, but it gets taken or damaged, or somehow no longer is the sword that I can use for battle, what am I going to do? I'm going to call on you for the sword I lent you when I had an extra one, and now that I don't, I'm going to call on my sword that you had until I claimed it back, and you had to give it back, which means when you go to battle, are you going to have my sword? No. So I want you to apply this theory to templates used by those who don't know how to craft their own, who are using someone that claims they work. Well, let's use the baseball analogy and say that if the one that has offered you their sword, they're on third base and haven't made it all the way home because they don't have the full results, they just have the claim of them, you haven't seen but you're trusting, if you hit a home run, you're not going to be able to get home. And if you're going to battle and they need to stand on the occupied territory of their notice that you copied and stood on the template of, you're going to get served up on the plate that is left over.
Hate to break it to you. Would love to be proved
wrong. Challenge me if you dare to. But do so in your private capacity without the collective body of groupthink coming with you. Because the truth is, every single one of us stand on our own on the day that we are faced with the trials and tribulations that take place for our soul to grow into our own, as ones that are capable and competent of standing for ourselves, which is why standing, status, and capacity are the three technicalities you need to be aware of if you are going to step anywhere close to the legal fiction. And by that, I do mean the law and all of its de facto systems that are upheld by the hegemonic priesthood, an idea I coined as the figurehead telling the tale to you here. So I'm going to keep it 10 minutes and less and simply say, if you have any ideas about what I have just shared as questions or comments, please do post them down below, let me know, and let's actually stand on solid ground together. Peace out. Laura J. Namaste.